viewers, welcome back to the channel for 2023. You're probably thinking, yep, it's been a long time since you posted any videos and you're not going to be a YouTube millionaire posting that much, but you know, that was never my intention. But I have been busy on things other than motorcycles. So I've been building a deck and putting a spa in on the front of my house, sort of shown here. And so that's kept me busy for many months. And apart from that, I haven't been doing any restorations. Nothing extraordinary has been happening in the motorcycle world for me, apart from six of us went down to Phillip Island for the MotoGP. That was a great trip. All of my mates were taking the piss out of me for wearing a Suzuki jacket and saying how, you know, you could get all the merch almost free because Suzuki was leaving MotoGP. But in the end, Alex Rins won the race, so that was a good weekend. So the only other thing that's happened very recently in my motorcycling world is I have a new motorbike. So I have decided that the last time I bought a brand new bike was in 1984, which was my Katana, which I still have. And a few of my mates sort of pointed me in the direction of a new bike that they thought I should buy, and so I eventually got one. So what I have purchased is this 2023 GSX S1000 GT. So that's pretty exciting. That's my first new bike for many years. So it's I've really only had that for a couple of weeks. It's only got something like 400 kilometers on it, so it's pretty new. I might be doing a couple of videos on that, and one of the first ones I thought I'd do on it is all about wheel alignment on motorcycles. Now, most people think, well, it's all just lined up by the swing arm. But you might notice sometimes you're driving down the road, you'll be behind a car and you'll see the car looks like it's sort of driving sideways, sort of crabbing, and that's because the back axle, maybe it's been in an accident or it's not adjusted properly, but the back axle is not square to the body, and so ends up the car sort of drives sideways down the road. And the same thing happens on motorcycles. So some of you probably know how to do this, but others may not. So I think I mentioned it in one of my other videos. So we're going to do what they call string lining on a motorbike, and that's basically just making sure that the back wheel and the front wheel are in perfect alignment, so your bike is not going sideways down the road. When I first got my Katana all those years ago, the marks on the swing arm, everybody thinks, well, you just line it up on the marks on the swing arm and surely it's all lined up, but that's not the case. The marks on the swing arm on the Katana were almost one notch out. So if you did line it up with the notches, you could feel it was riding crooked, and you end up like even your steering, even your handlebars are slightly off. And I noticed that when I got it, and I string lined it, and every time I put it in for service, which I had to do because I'd bought it from this dealer that wanted me to get the first services done with them, I said, look, if you're going to adjust the chain, just adjust it evenly on both sides. Don't set it up to the swing arm marks, and every time I hop back on it, I could tell straight away that it was crooked. So now the new GT, the back wheel might be straight, but I thought that's a job that I should do. And so we're basically just going to do that, show you how to do it. And it's sort of a once-off job. Once you do it, and then you adjust the back wheel evenly, then you should never have to do it again unless somebody plays with it, or maybe you take the back wheel out. Probably worth checking again. So let's get on with that. So what are we really talking about when we're talking about string lining or wheel aligning a motorbike? So if you imagine this is your back tyre and this is your front tyre. Now obviously your front tyre is going to be slightly narrower than your back tyre. Now in a perfect situation, your back tyre will be like this, your front tyre will be like this, and as you ride down the road, everything's perfectly aligned and you're going straight. Now, if your back wheel has been adjusted so that it's, say, at a slight angle, I'm exaggerating, but something like that, what happens is that as you ride along, that will compensate and you'll end up basically riding down the road like this, or or the opposite direction, same sort of thing. So what we want to do is have some way of making sure that the back wheel and the front wheel are lined up perfectly. So we use a piece of string for that. You might think that's pretty basic, but it's a good way of doing it. And as I say, once you've done it and adjusted it, and then assuming you adjust your chain by adjusting evenly on both sides, half a turn both sides or one turn both sides, etc., then it should always stay in alignment. So it's certainly worth checking. So I'm going to check it on the GT. It may be fine, but it might need adjustment, and so that's one thing I thought I'd do. So what we're going to do initially is we're going to measure the width of the back tyre. Then we're going to measure the width of the front tyre, and then we're going to run a piece of string parallel to the side of the back tyre and up parallel to the front tyre. And if we subtract the width of the front tyre from the back tyre and then divide that by 2, that will give us what the gap should be here and here. And if those are equal and they're the right measurement, then we know that everything's straight. So that's the first thing we'll do, is do some measurements. So the back of my GT has a 190 tyre. So if we put the calipers on there, we can see that it actually measures 195 millimeters for the back. Now the front tyre on the GT is a 120. If we measure that, we can see that, yes, it's pretty much exactly 120. So what we need to do is subtract 120 from 195, which gives us 75, and then divide that by 2, which is, say, around 37 millimeters. So what that means is that once we run the string line around the back wheel and up, and then make sure it's parallel front and back to the front wheel, we should have a gap of 37 millimeters between the string and the side of the front tyre, front and back. Now, if it's larger than 37, that means the back wheel's pointing this way. If it's less than 37, back wheel's pointing that way. So we then just adjust the rear axle so that's in line. So you can imagine, like, the distance across here is maybe 200 and something. If that's out by a millimeter, then you're going to be out by, say, 7 or 8, 9, 10 millimeters at the front here. So a small difference here is going to make a big difference up front. So let's check it. Now, you will need to do this on a clean, flat surface. And you don't need to do both sides. As long as if you measure it on one side, then it's going to be the same on the other. So you don't need to do both sides. Maybe pick the side that's sort of the easiest to see things. Now, I've got my bike on a paddock stand because this bike doesn't have a center stand. What you'll probably find if your bike does have a center stand is that it will get in the way. So you'll have to do it while the bike's on the side stand, which isn't a real problem, but you just need to, clear the path. If we look down here, we need to be able to see the back tyre and the front tyre without any obstructions. So we'll wrap some string around the back there, and then pull it towards the front. Make sure it's just touching the front edge of the back tyre so that we know it's parallel, and then turn the front wheel so that the gap front and back is the same, and then measure it. Now I'm just using some builder's line for this. You can obviously use whatever you've got, as long as you've got enough to get from the back wheel to the front wheel. So this has got a loop in the end of it, so I'll just hook that over the valve stem, and then basically we're going to run it along like this. So eventually it will be sort of, maybe about that sort of level. We obviously need to get it at a level where it's visible and it's not running into anything like the exhaust or side stands or anything like that. So the level of that string at the back at the moment is in a pretty good height. You may want to get somebody to help you just to position it in the right position, but or maybe use a bit of tape. But the next thing we want to do is we need to pull the string reasonably tight, and then just starting out wider, sometimes it helps to just sort of jiggle the string so that when it comes in and touches the front edge, because it's wrapped around the back edge of the back tyre, when it touches the front edge of the back tyre, that's when we know it's parallel. So I'm jiggling that, and then when it just touches the front edge of the back tyre, that means it's basically running parallel to that back wheel. Now, once you get it to that point, then you need to start squaring up the front wheel so that the gap at the front between the front tyre and the string and the back of the front tyre and the string is the same, and then we can measure it and see how close we are to that 37 millimeters. Now, so I've got that just touching the back wheel, and if I get my handy dandy ruler here and measure it, certainly looks more than 37 millimeters to me at the moment. That's almost 50 millimeters. And the back is about the same. So I know I know the front wheel is pointing pretty much straight towards the back wheel, and that with the gap we've got here is 50 mils. Now, that seems too wide to me, which would mean that the back wheel is pointing this way slightly. What I might do to double check that is check it on the other side, just to be sure that all my measurements are correct. So let's do that. So we'll measure this side and get that string just touching the front of the back wheel. And then if we measure the gap, that's about 28 mils. So to me, that means that the back wheel on this bike is slightly that way. So we need to adjust it. Now, to change it like that, we can either tighten the right side looking from here, which will bring it that way, or we can loosen the other side to bring it that way. So obviously if you change anything on this side, it's going to change the chain tension. So first of all, we'll check and see if the chain tension seems okay. If it's okay, then we'll adjust the other side. And if it maybe needs a little bit of tightening, we can do some adjustment on this side. Now it won't take much just to change it that much, but let's give that a try and see what happens. Now, as it turns out, the chain tension on this is fine. I mean, it's a brand new bike, only done a few hundred kilometres, so that's not surprising. And if we look at the marks, we can see, if you can see up there, the top there is just on the third mark, and come around this side, where is it? That's on the third mark as well. So according to whoever put this bike together, that should mean that the back wheel is straight. But as we've seen, it's slightly off. So since the chain tension is fine, what I'll do is I'll loosen the main axle nut, loosen this off, and then just kick this forward a bit, and that will twist the tyre slightly that way and straighten it up to the front wheel. So I've loosened the big axle nut on the other side, and then loosened this adjuster. I turned this in so there was about maybe say a millimetre gap, then gave the back tyre a good kick, so it's now hard up against there. So that should have moved the back wheel just slightly that way. So let's double check the gap again at the front. Right, so we're back up the front again. Wiggle the string and just slowly move it in till it stops, which means it's touching the front edge of that back tyre. And now if we look at that, that looks pretty spot on. That's about 37, which is what we calculated earlier. Down the back, pretty much the same. Probably could just straighten that front wheel up a little bit. So, pretty close there. Now, I might just check the other side just to be sure. Remember, that was sitting at about 50 and this was at about 28. So now we're looking at about 37. So we'll measure the other side and see how close we are on that side, but it certainly should be a lot straighter now. So we're just going to double check this side again. I've actually put a little bit of tape on the back there because it kept falling down. So just so that the back edge is at the right height. So again, we just wobble the string and slowly move it in, and when you see it stop wobbling, that means it's just touched the front edge of the back wheel. And then we can double check that a few times, and you can see that we're pretty close there too. So about 37, that's just about 37. So as far as I'm concerned, that's much better. So originally we had like 50 mil gap on this side and about 28 on the other, so we adjusted it slightly at the back, and that means that the back wheel is now perfectly in line with the front, so the bike will run true. It wasn't out by much, but you might as well have it straight so that the handling is as it should be. Now if I look at the marks on the swing arm on this side at the back, now it's just now slightly in front of that third notch. So all I need to do is remember that when we're either checking it or adjusting it. So what did we learn? We learned that this bike from the factory was slightly out of wheel alignment. So remember, when we checked the gap on this side, it was 50 mil, which means that the back wheel was slightly facing this way. I mean, that's a bit exaggerated, but which meant the gap on this side was bigger, gap on that side was smaller. So we adjusted the axle here to straighten that up. Now we have a fairly even gap at the front, which means that the bike's going to run in a straight line. So there we have it, viewers. Checking the wheel alignment on your bike is certainly worth checking. This bike is brand new and it was slightly out. When I got my katana, that was out by a long way. So yeah, don't believe the notches on the swing arm, because they only need to be out by, a millimeter or two, and it'll make a difference. So then the trick is, once you've done it, you just, if you want to adjust the chain, you just make sure you adjust it evenly on both sides, so that will keep the back axle straight. If you're putting it in for service, you can let them know that you've done a string line, and if they're going to adjust the chain, they should do it evenly on both sides. Whether they listen to you or not is another thing, but you can always check it when you get home. If you know where the relative marks are on the swing arm, say like on, for example, mine, the right one needs to be about a millimeter in front of where the left one is, and that should keep it pretty straight. So hopefully that's a useful thing. Thanks for watching, and sorry about the long delay between videos, but as I say, I've been doing other things, doing building work, and now sort of getting back into some motorcycle stuff. I'm thinking about doing a comparison between the new GT and my other touring bike, the 1250 FA. You might think, well, why would you compare them? They're 11 years apart, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. So I might do a quick video to compare the two, because when I got onto the GT, it felt quite familiar. And obviously not, my other bike's a completely different feel. So I thought it might be worth doing some comparisons, and then some things that I do like about the GT, and some little niggling things that annoy me about it. But still very happy with my purchase. And waiting on my letter from Suzuki to let me know when I can purchase the factory panniers, the factory luggage. But yeah, as I say, thanks for watching. Sorry for the long delay, but I do things other than motorcycles. But thanks for watching, and click on like below if you liked this video, if you found it useful. If you liked it enough, then subscribe. And if you find this channel interesting, and some of your mates might be interested in some of the previous videos, then certainly spread the word. So yeah, Happy New Year to everybody, and we'll see you in the next video. See you later.